Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Walk the Block Navigating Digital Finance. I hope everyone had a very happy Labor Day and hopefully a productive back to Tuesday. I had one as well, so my indicator is I'm having a very fancy double espresso at 6 p.m. here, so that's what I'm doing anyways. Outside of that, we are talking about a handful of stuff tonight. We did get some economic numbers, so we're going to be covering that for GDP and job prospects. Additionally, this last week of crypto news was definitely dominated by World Liberty Finance and things associated with the people running it. So we're going to be bringing down all that. And to close this out, we also have an upgrade for the Solana network. So theme of the show is that people are making moves and we expect them to keep happening for the rest of the year effectively. Outside of that, though, hello, welcome back. I'm Zenith and I'm joined by my excellent co-host, Dace. How we doing, buddy?
Doing well, sir. Well, sir, the first week of the month is always fresh economic data, plenty of stuff to do on the business side of things, and keeping busy.
Absolutely. I know it might also be it is officially September, and we have talked a little bit about historical performance by month. So the question on everyone's mind for this year is September going to be green or red? And we'll only have to figure out when we see it. But August didn't turn out too great. It was down 6.5% for the month. But outside of that, the crypto markets aren't looking too terrible. Although I do think that there's a little bit of sentiment of everyone like, it's kind of low right now. I don't know. What are you feeling out there?
Yeah, I would agree. I've mentioned in some of our other groups and Telegram and things like that this year in 25 is the year after the BTC halving. And so it's got interesting historical patterns happening this year, right? That's typically a pretty special year for crypto, at least historically speaking. We knew that going into 25. And so what I would add here is that this feels a little like the January to March time through this past year, where we expected up and we expected a top in March, and everybody wanted to sell in March. And what happened? We topped in February, right? And March was down. And so I'm biased because I wouldn't be here if I wasn't into crypto. And so I would love for us to go up. But I do think that if you look at the historical patterns, August was supposed to be higher than it was. Traditionally Septembers are not great months. And so I'm wondering if we do that same flip-flop that we did in Q1, where because everybody's expecting A, we front run A and we get B instead. Like you said, we were expecting a green August and we didn't get one. And so with the interest rates and some of the other economic data, which we'll touch here in a bit, we may see another flip-flop like that this year. Who knows?
That's true. And just for the record, specifically what we're talking about is in years of the halvening, or after the halvening rather. August is usually a green month. So 2021, we went up about 14%. 2017, big month, 65%. And 2013, 30%. This time, down just a hair. So I guess we're playing off the old adage there, which is they might not repeat, but they kind of rhyme. So maybe not this month or August, maybe this month. We'll see. But outside of that, yes, we do have a lot to talk about. In fact, up first, let's talk about the big stuff. The entire economy. How about that? So we have an article here from CNBC. U.S. economy grew at a 3% rate in quarter two, a better than expected pace, even as the tariffs hit. Key points here is that the GDP jumped to 3% for the second quarter, better than the estimated 2.3%. Official numbers were 3.3%. So that's pretty much a full point higher. And it reversed a decline that we had for the last quarter. So there you go. 2 quarters, not back to back. So it's technically not a recession if you go by that old definition. Some of the big news stories of this one was that while exports declined 1.8% during the period, imports fell 30.3%, reversing the 37.9% surge in quarter one. And then on top of that, consumer spending rose 1.4% in the second quarter, better than the 0.5% in the prior period. So at a glance here, well, what are we taking away from this?
Well, the data is lagging, and that import number checks out, that everybody's going to be backing off on their imports as they become more expensive. But I think that decrease, if the people who are bearish on the tariff policies were accurate, those numbers should be more like 50% or more, right? In terms of the people crying wolf and saying that, tariffs are going to completely sink the economy. I think, are they a catalyst, in terms of the executive branch pulling the levers that they can to entice the monetary policy that they want? That's what I think. I don't think that their design is to sink the economy. I think their design is to to stimulate the environment and the whole soup, right? They're all, as we cover here on the show a lot, everything is all sort of interlinked when it comes to monetary and financial policy. You've got the Fed and the government, and both sides only have certain levers they can pull. And so I think this has a lot to do with that. And I think if the tariffs were as big and bad and scary as they claimed, this number would be a lot bigger.
I agree. I think one of the arguments about tariffs that was somewhat proved right about this data point, granted, it's only a singular data point, so we got to take it with a grain of salt. But what we're seeing here by the data is that, yes, imports have fallen, and tariffs could be the cause of that. But the overall GDP grew more than expected. So it could be how you calculate GDP, but the overall idea is that it's pretty much just looking at the amount of stuff that the country produces. So if we decreased imports, but then also grew the economy, it means that things that were previously imported were now being able to be produced domestically, which got accounted in that GDP numbers. So by all metrics, this looks like tariffs have somewhat arguably increased domestic production. So it's painting with a very broad brush, but at the same time, this is one of the arguments that we heard when the tariff arguments were being made back in March. And, well, it looks like that might possibly be the case, at least for quarter 2 anyways.
Yeah, like you said, the overall bottom line number being better despite the import number going down is very telling. I agree.
Very true. Alrighty, so this is one half of the economic equation, so to speak. So it looks like the economy is growing. If the economy is growing, then hopefully it means that it's keeping up with inflation. But there was another bit of information that we did get recently, which is that there is an estimate that the jobs for March and April might be revised down, and it appears that we're only adding about 35,000 jobs to the economy every month. Unemployment rate, by the way it's measured by the government, appears to be stable around that 4.1, 4.2% metric. But as we get closer to this Fed meeting in the mid-September, I think we're definitely pointing towards one side of the dual mandate, as you and I were talking about in the green room. So care to elaborate your thoughts on that one a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And I sort of pointed at it a little bit just a second ago of, I think I've said this on the show a few times that, Chair Powell has a dual mandate. The Federal Reserve is responsible for inflation and unemployment. Inflation numbers are things that there's lots of different variables and ways that you can unpack that. Unemployment is a little more direct, and I think they have less confidence in their ability to manipulate or sort of not manipulate, but augment unemployment numbers in the short term the way they do with inflation. And so, yeah, I think they've declared victory over the unemployment side of their mandate for about a year, year and a half, and it's popping back up in their face now. And I think, that will wind up being the catalyst for rate cuts. It won't be inflation data.
That's true. I know we may talk about rate cuts ad nauseum on this show, but we believe it's very important for the crypto markets, especially when it comes to quantitative easing and escaping that quantitative tightening to allow that to go up. One of the things that you also brought to my attention recently was that the M2 money supply did reach a new all-time high. So let's go ahead and pull that guy up real quick. This chart might look a bit odd, but if we're looking at it, what we see here is pretty much a line straight up and to the right. This is the M2 money supply, which pretty much calculated is all the money in the bank accounts and also includes debts out there as well, and all the notes in circulation. So what we're seeing here is that we did have a peak back in March of 2022, bit of a dip as the Federal Reserve raised interest rates to help combat that. As a result of that, the cost of borrowing money went up, so less money was created through fractional reserve banking, but pretty much bottomed out in January of 2024. And since then, we've been on the rise, and now we're back at new all-time highs. Interesting. So if we had to take a guess at where you think this chart goes, where would you say that goes?
for as long as we have a market and have a screen to click on, up.
Yeah, that sounds about right. This is a bit of an odd chart to look at, especially considering it goes all the way back to 1959. But I think the pattern might be clear on this one. There are lulls and very small dips along the way. Interesting, when you take it all the way out here, the most recent dip we had was actually one of the larger ones in the entire history of the M2 money supply. But outside of that, I think that what we're seeing, if we focus in on the current timeline, if you will, which is pretty much COVID time, and then the dealing with the effects of that, and now we're getting back to what could arguably be old reliable, just going up and to the right. So for the folks that may be new here, as the money supply increases and we print more money, what do we predict happens with the crypto markets?
Right. That as more money exists in the system, money will get stored in Bitcoin, and then the money that is stored in Bitcoin over time, that will build up in the profits of the strong holders who then speculate down the risk curve, right? And so they rotate into things like Ethereum and smaller cap coins. We've covered sort of a 4-year cycle plan. It's part of our staple. It's something that I think you and I both learned through the CMC course back in the day. There's a really famous cryptographic where it's Bitcoin season, then alt season, then large caps and small caps. And so because of that contraction, right, in this screen that you're looking at right now, you've got a contraction. Q quantitative tightening is that small period of time where the thing isn't going up quite as hard, right? Yeah, exactly. The zenith is currently circling. And so if you go back to the COVID dip where this thing was really going up straight vertical, that's your quantitative easing. So number going up harder on this is quantitative easing, meaning the federal government is introducing more liquid currency into the system. And so that's why we speculate so much on the rate cuts, and also why this M2 money supply, if you overlap it against BTC, that's a fancy correlation people have looked at quite a lot to sort of give the basic premise that over time, as more money supply is printed, more of it will be stored into BTC, which has a finite value, right? And that's a very strong BTC narrative this cycle. We'll see how long it maintains, but interesting thing to think about.
Very true. Alrighty, well, I'll tell you what, while we're here, let's go ahead and take a look at the markets and what's going on. We mentioned it at the top of the show. Bitcoin did come down from its recent all-time high, which was at about $123,000, $124,000 there. It looks like we bottomed right around 107,000. So one of the big questions going on right now is there more downside to come, or is this the potential start of a recovery? Well, let's go ahead and flip on our moving averages here. So what we see is that we've broken down below our 20 and 50-day moving averages. That indicates that our short and medium-term indicators are to the downside. However, if we also use some other indicators, looking namely at RSI here, or the relative strength index, it would indicate that we have potentially bottomed out for the, this is kind of an indicator of sentiment or strength inside of the markets. So if we can see the RSI maybe come down and print a new higher low, that would be an indicator that the trend is reversing. At that point, things we're going to be looking for are, number one, we got to go contend with the 20-day moving average. That's going to be this yellow line right here. Currently, it's sitting at about 112,000 in change, basically just 113,000. So that's going to be one of the first levels we're looking at. It also kind of coincides with this area where we had a dip previously, right around that $112,000 area. So if we can get through that, then we can go contend with the 50-day moving average, and then eventually keep that going so that we can get the 20-day moving average on top of the 50, indicating that both indicators are in the bullish direction. Other possible reasons why we might believe that is the case. Well, if you're a fan of the 60-day cycles, which I am, and I nerd out about on here, so apologies for that, but I do think it's a very good indicator, and it tracks along with it originated in the Forex or foreign exchange markets where they had 60-day cycles, and it's been largely relevant to the crypto markets as well. It appears that we had a high on day 53 with the new all-time high, and then since we were so late in the cycle, it means that, yeah, you're probably going to get a bit of an extended cycle, which we have a potential 71-day cycle here. Is that a bit long? Yeah, it's a tad bit long, but again, it's well within reason when it comes to what the average length is, and that still falls well within just about one hair outside of one standard deviation for the averages, if you like to do that math speak like I do. But also, more importantly, if we flip over to our number two, that's going to be Ethereum. She's looking like she's holding up pretty good. very recently broke under that 20-day moving average after bouncing off of it twice as support. So now, again, if the markets follow Bitcoin, which hint they usually do, it means that this one has less resistance to get through before it can start really moving towards the upside and getting further into that all-time high territory. So overall, markets right now looking pretty good over the last day with Bitcoin having that recovery right here. We saw pretty much the average token go anywhere from 3 to 5% towards the positive direction. So again, we're going to need more confirmation, but that's at least what the markets are looking at. No, Dace, my talking crazy over here? Does this make sense?
No, it makes complete sense. I was just going to tell you, your moving averages tell the story, and that's that Ethereum has kept its more bullish structure much more strongly than Bitcoin has on this pullback since your local top there during this cycle, which was also, I think, Bitcoin's all-time high, if I'm not mistaken. And so, yeah, it's been interesting to watch the momentum shift around and watch Ethereum, like I said, maintain more momentum during these dips. That is, to me, indicative that we are getting closer to that higher speculation environment. Rate cuts support this. You've got a couple of different data points that support this, despite the 4-year cyclers, your crypto vets, getting nervous that that time may be running out, right? And so, there are people out there saying we're going to have to, shake the 4-year cyclers before we can go up, and that's why this is going to be the super long cycle. I've heard that, and then I've heard you guys are all just, in denial. The top's already in, right? It's right there on the chart. We already hit it. It's over. That's the beauty of this space, right? Is that it's the nature of speculation to some degree, but I really like your moving averages. They're, like you said, one is unwrapped, right? And we've still got Ethereum fully wrapped, even though it's dipped under the 20. The moving averages are still stacked on each other appropriately for it to continue its bullish trend, which is not the case for Bitcoin. And so, yeah, it's going to be really interesting to watch it play out over the next 30, 60 days.
Most definitely. And to tie it back into something we were talking about earlier in the stream, when it comes to Bitcoin performance by month, well, if the 60-day cycle lines up where as it does right now, then that means we pretty much had the cycle low on September 1st. So 60 days is a lot longer than a month, meaning that there's a very high probability that when we say that September might actually end up being a green month, yeah, there's a decent chance, considering if your cycle low starts at the beginning of the month, that means you have a whole month to run towards the upside and even give some good blanket room for having even a small retracement back. It's still largely going to be higher than where it started if you have that start of the month coincide with that cycle low. So again, that's another data point as to why we're trying to say this instead of just be like, no, this time's different, I swear. There's actual reason for it.
Exactly. And one that ties back to what I said at the top of the show of, like, February and March flip-flopped our expectations, and this is a good illustration that, like, if you know that historically August performs, and then we see how August ended here, I mean, it, like you said, with the market trying to put in a bottom, it does support that thesis that everybody in August was trying to front run the September sell, and maybe September, October starting a new bullish cycle.
Agreed. The larger point here, though, is that it's very easy to get caught up. And I mean, what's the gosh, who wrote Huckleberry Finn? Is it Mark Twain? I think he was the one that said there are lies, damn lies, and statistics. Well, depending on how you measure your statistics, you can kind of warp the image here. So again, it all depends on exactly where you start and stop your measuring points. So back in the beginning of the year, we're going off some very rigid boxes to follow. The data didn't quite follow the boxes perfectly. And here, I think we're seeing a similar scenario, which is that the overall sentiment of the market is telling one story, and it might not fit perfectly into those prepackaged boxes that we call the calendar. So at the same time, though, we do believe that the 4-year cycle is a time-based theory. Therefore, on the grander scale, we can still look at that and try to follow it up and make sure it's fitting that. But when we get down to the more granular levels, and yes, I realize it's kind of weird to call a whole month granular, but in the grand scheme of things, after we just looked at the M2 chart that went back to 1959, yeah, this is pretty granular.
Right. No, I agree. And something else that we talked about is sorry about that, is the IS and the business cycle. It is put in a record amount of time under 50 in a state of contraction, which is another reason why we're leaning towards, hey, look, we're going to watch the 4-year cycle of course, but Could we extend beyond that sort of classic narrative? I think it's very much in the cards. We'll see.
There you go. To move into one of our first news stories of the day, or I guess second one, actually. We did cover economic data there. Let's talk about the tail of a chart. That's going to be this one. This is the Kronos token, or commonly referred to as the crypto.com token. So if we scroll out a little bit, we'll see that, well, it's been on the up and up, had some tops, run up a little bit, but in particular, one of these candles is rather suspect in a good way, actually, which is that we had an absolute massive week for this token, which was last week, by the way. And if we actually break it down and look at it, there was a pretty substantial jump from about 15 cents all the way up to 39 cents. And now it looks like it's come down with a recent low of about 25 and could possibly be recovering at 28 there. So the question is, what happened to this token? And well, the answer to that one is this. Nope, actually not. Here we go. Thank you. All right, coming to us from investors.com. Trump family expands crypto empire with $6.4 billion venture. President Donald Trump and his family are expanding their cryptocurrency empire with plans for digital asset treasury company. The announcement comes as Eric Trump is heading a crypto-focused trip to Japan. Trump Media and Technology Group on Tuesday announced a partnership with Crypto.com to establish a treasury company holding CRO called Trump Media Group CRO Strategy. That is a mouthful. CRO is a native token to the Kronos ecosystem developed by Crypto.com. The company plans on to build a treasury with $6.4 billion in backing with Trump Media and Crypto.com as founding partners. The treasury holdings are to include $1 billion in the CRO token, which the chart we just saw, that's that one, $200 million in cash, $220 million in warrants, along with a $5 billion equity line of credit from a Yorkville affiliate. The $1 billion in CRO tokens reportedly represented about 19% of the token's market capitalization at the time of this announcement. Let's flip over to good old CoinGecko and see what's going on here. There you go. There's our nice pump, and let's see what's going on. So we have a total max supply of 100 billion tokens, and if we go back to our article here, it's looking like about 19%. Yep, that sounds about right. So currently, circulating supply is 33 billion, meaning that there's still a good amount of this token to be released. So as far as whether or not a token is fully vested when it comes to the release schedule, this is kind of on the younger side, which is crazy to say considering it's been around for a decent amount of time here, all the way back in early 2019, if you will. So it's been around for 6 years and only about 33% of the supply is released. But this looks like a rather large investment to maybe help facilitate the release of the rest of it and also hold on to a good chunk of it.
So, from what I understand, they actually expanded the total token supply, Zenith, which upset some of their long-term holders. Right after Trump, won the election, and there was lots of rumblings about, federal crypto adoption. I remember seeing that headline come across. You'll have to look it up or fact check me on that, but I'm pretty sure they upped their total supply here very recently, which was a bit of controversy.
I will give that one a quick Google. Didn't
mean to derail you. It is of note, right? And this is
that is a very important note, actually. So the reason why I'm saying that's a big note is because when you start messing with total token supply, you actually kind of erode confidence because you're doing exactly what crypto is trying to get away from. Which is that if you remember, Bitcoin specifically was created after the 2008 financial crash, where insurance companies and banks were bailed out using US dollars, which has been printed ad nauseum. And that means that if you can create a money supply that has a true limited supply, then you can create confidence that it's not going to be inflated to hell. So if we're looking at it, here we go. In March 2025, a governance proposal passed that reissued 70 billion CRO tokens that were burned back in 2021, bringing the token's total supply back to 100 billion CRO. The tokens will be held by Kronos Strategic Reserve and released over a multi-year program. The proposal outlines a 5 to 10 year linear vesting schedule for the reissued tokens, all held in an escrow-style reserve, and these tokens are intended to support ecosystem growth, including AI initiatives, proposed Kronos ETF in the US, and broader infrastructure development. All right. That's not terrible. It's a change, which definitely threw some people off. It looks like the vote dynamics in the past where early votes showed a nearly 96% opposition, but ultimately a late surge in the voting power from stakeholders flipped the outcome to 61 vote in favor, 17% against, with the remainder either abstaining or vetoing. So that is a very important.
One wonders who the stakeholders are and if they changed hands after Trump was elected. Who knows?
It's entirely possible, but we don't exactly have the ledger on that one.
Definitely don't have the ledger on that. But what we do know is that they then partnered with World Liberty, and I believe either like just sent them the supply or like they, and they're deepening that partnership now, as you've read in the headline today. And so, yeah, look, I mean, probably a good one to pick up, even despite the bit of a red flag about the token supply. I think it's probably a case of a long player in the game who's not a big player in the game, who had an inside track to an executive relationship, and so I think that it's probably not a bad bet. I know I actually have a couple of old friends that have been like long holders of this. And they're not like crypto people, but they're like, yeah, I have some of that gross, and like they've crushed it and they're just sitting on it. So I know there's some faithful holders of this thing.
There you go. Tell you what, let's dive a little bit deeper into the weeds on this one. So going over to our good friend ChatGPT, aka my newest Google search, pretty much. But if we look at the details of the agreement that went down between these two groups, what we see is that it's not directly World Liberty Finance, although they're associated with it. But what we're seeing is that they're actually creating a new NASDAQ ticker, MCGA, which stands for, oh gosh, what was it? I don't even remember that one. But I'll put it this way. The main point is this, which is that this is kind of a collaboration to build up the treasury here. And there's also different agreements that are going on in the process as well. The Trump Media Group committed to buying $105 million in Crow tokens to hold for the corporate treasury, which we talked about. And additionally, this is the new thing here, Crypto.com will acquire $50 million in Trump Media common stock, aligning the interest of both companies. So that MCGA, that's the NASDAQ ticker to watch out for. It does not currently exist yet, but you already have $50 million that's going to be going into it.
Right. That's why I remembered it as a donation, or as they gave it to him, is because it was you hold my stuff, I hold your stuff. Right. I think
precisely
there was a similar deal done. Maybe it was either with Trump Media or World Liberty, one of the Trump affiliated teams with Tron, a very similar structured deal. I remember as well. So thank you for the details. It makes it make a lot more sense.
There you go. Final notes here. Integration of the Kronos token into digital platforms. We might have some potential increased functionality. Trump Media will integrate Crow into Truth Social and Truth Plus by using Crypto.com's wallet infrastructure. Users will be able to convert platform-earned gems into Crow tokens and other benefits. Crow will serve as a utility token within the Trump Media ecosystem, and users may pay for subscriptions or services using their Crow balance. Exclusive incentives, like discounted Truth Plus subscriptions, will be available to users with Crypto.com accounts. So, increasing functionality for tokens. What's not to love? I mean, you don't have to be someone that's on Truth Social or even in that ecosystem, but if the token has increased use cases, then it means that there's an increase for product market fit there. So, I mean, it seems like largely upside.
It's true. It's true. It's funny. What you read is increased functionality, and that will provide value. I have every confidence. But then on the other side of it, like I got into this after the Robinhood GameStop fiasco, and so my interest in crypto had to do with me holding and owning my own stuff, and this decentralized principles and autonomy, and like, this sounds pretty centralized. Like, if it's their wallet and it's their stable coin and it's their, it sounds like it's pretty in their pocket, which again, it's going to be, now that we're reaching this new frontier of crypto legislation, it's going to be who can find and strike that right balance, right? Of the decentralized principles and values of crypto combined with the centralized strength of the ease of features that you're talking about here. And so this seems like a good mix. We'll see how it goes for them, but we're seeing lots of different people, whether it's launching their own native stable coin, or like, hey, come use your, here's some credit card services so you can keep your money here, within the decentralized ethos of crypto. You have big centralized institutions trying to offer products to get people's interest and attract their dollar. So it's going to be interesting to watch and see who comes up with that proper balance.
true. As far as the wallet discussion goes, I think that you're spot on, but there is also an alternative. We're going to have to get clarification on this one because yes, crypto.com does have their app, which is a centralized exchange holding. It is not a hot wallet, but there is also a crypto.com hot wallet as well. So it depends on which one of those things gets integrated in there. Could be both. Could just be the central exchange. Wouldn't be too surprised if it was that way. But at the same time, though,
it's important to point out. Yeah, Coinbase wallet also exists. Also two different things for sure.
Definitely. So final point here for the old Kronos thing is that Crow token surged nearly 30%, reflecting strong market enthusiasm. Realistically, over the course of days, it literally did a 2x. And then stock dynamics, the Trump media shares group jumped around 5 to 6% with a slight dip as well. But overall, that was one of the big moves last week that we've seen continue out through the weekend, actually a little bit. But that is a number one story regarding what's going on with all this stuff. Number two, talked about them a little bit, but here's the big one. So World Liberty Financial, Trump-backed WLFI to unlock 24.6 billion tokens at launch. World Liberty Financial published a blog post saying that the initial circulating supply for the tokens will be 24.6 billion. It is a decentralized finance platform backed by the Trump family, and they will unlock 24.6 billion tokens at launch, according to CoinMarketCap. They clarified that the initial circulating supply for its tokens will be that 10 billion of the tokens will be for World Liberty Financial, 7.7 billion will be for Alt5 Sigma Corporation, 2.8 billion for liquidity and marketing, and 4 billion for public sale participants, representing their initial 20% unlock at launch. So what we're looking at here is actually this. So this is the World Liberty Financial website. What we have here is what they've done is that up until this point, the token that they're referring to has actually been a governance token and has not been available for trade and has not been available publicly for trading. Now it is as of September 2nd, which just happens to be today. So what we're seeing is that this is the token going live, but it's not the only token that's in this ecosystem. It's available on Ethereum, Binance, and Solana, but they also have a stablecoin, USD1. This is it's upgraded. They say it's the US dollar stablecoin upgraded for a new era of finance, stable, secure, and transparent by design. If we go look at it, here are the tokens in question. World Liberty Financial. As you can see, the chart is very new. This is max, and it counts by the hour. I'll put it that way. Additionally, we have USD1. This is the other stablecoin. This one is a little bit older and goes back towards the creation of World Liberty Finance, which was back in March. So it's a stable coin, so chart should look like that. But what we're seeing is that these two entities are building towards something larger. Back to the World Liberty website, if we go back to this page, we'll see that there's two things marked as soon. One of them is going to be an application. They say you can deposit crypto via wallet or bank account and spend by accessing your liquidity anytime. So it just looks like an on-ramp and potentially a wallet. We'll have to see what kind of wallet, whether it's more centralized or if it's an actual hot wallet. But also, this one might pique some people's interest. Lend and borrow. Supply digital assets and borrow against your holdings. Monitor risk easily with real-time health factors. So sounds like this is an ecosystem being built out over here, and we're kind of early in it. Is this sound... Have we seen this kind of thing before?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, they're following a playbook, you know what I mean? With the guidance and insight of their connections, I'm sure. And so, yeah, look, it's whether it's Solana or Sonic / Phantom or Pulse Chain, whatever your favorite decentralized layer one is. It sounds like another one of those. And I believe USD1 is launching. Is it support on Solana first? Is that the deal?
It looks like the contract is actually on BNB.
Oh, interesting. That's very interesting. So that's even more sort of DeFi native, right?
A little bit, yeah. Because they've been definitely marketing this whole thing as being DeFi first.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see what other chains start to support USD1, right? In a environment that's kind of dominated with USDT and USDC. Yeah, that's very interesting.
True. To give you a little further context when it comes to the actual WLF token, as it stands right now, here's the functionality. You can use it as a governance token. Holders can vote on platform decisions such as protocol parameters, financial incentives, development priorities, and even measures like a token burn program. As of today, it is now being traded on major exchanges like Binance, OKX, Bybit, KuCoin, BitGet, Kraken, Gate.io, and more. There's also both spot trading and perpetual futures trading. There are staking rewards. They're being used in staking programs. You can lock it up to earn passive income within the ecosystem. These staking opportunities are often accessible through BitGet and other ones. And then you can also get transaction fee benefits, reduced transaction fees when using WLFI for services inside of their own ecosystem. And then additionally, there is potential for a buyback and burn program as well. So that is the current functionality as it stands. We covered it on the website. They're looking at doing a wallet, and they're looking at doing lending protocols as well. Lending protocols are something that we've been following for a good bit here as well, whether it's over on the Pulse Chain side of the house or it's over on all the other platforms where it kind of originated. And largely, a lot of that code has been forked. I would imagine we're probably going to be seeing something very similar here, which is that if there's existing code that works well, oh gosh, what's the name of is it Liquidity?
Liquidity.
Liquidity. That's one of the most popular forks when it comes to lending protocols. So would not be too surprised if we see something similar here. But overall, the whole point of the show today is that we wanted to highlight that World Liberty Financial is actually starting to make some moves when it comes to everything going on. Real quick, I want to give you guys a quick rundown of kind of what they are and then who are some of the major players. So as far as the backgrounds of the company, it was founded. We'll give you the there you go. Nice visual. Founded back in 2024, it operates as a decentralized finance and cryptocurrency company controlled by the Trump family. A Trump-affiliated company owns 60% of WLF, entitling the family to 75% of the revenue from token sales. Key figures include Eric Trump, Donald Trump Jr., and Barron Trump, who hold executive roles. Tech and crypto operator Zach Witkoff is also a co-founder and overseeing daily operations alongside partners Zachary Folkman and Chase Harrow. So right now, current projects include the WLFI token, USD1 stablecoin, and the Trump meme coin is through the WLF. So that's 3 tokens right there. The Trump meme coin was launched back in January, I want to say. Since then, it has not seen much action at all, if we're being honest here. So launched back in January, had a high of about $44 there, and the all-time low is about $7.50, currently sitting at about $8.40. We did see some functionality for real-world integration using this token. There was a White House dinner that was offered to some of the largest holders of the token. So I believe that this pump right here was actually from that announcement itself. But since then, kind of has come down to the right. It's a meme coin. There's not a whole lot to say about it, but it is what it is.
And honestly, in my opinion, Zenith, I agree there's not a lot to say about it, but there's maybe a little more. And just say that I think it marked the top of a certain season, and also basically Solana season, but also like that like meme season, or all of these lots of people in the trenches getting viral on Twitter, holding tokens for 14 and 30 seconds at a time, and just launching and re-rinsing, and there's like a whole culture of that like was the L1 Solana went on an incredible run while all of that was sort of becoming popular, and this was launched at the zenith of that whole situation. And so like you said, it does look like every other meme coin, but the timing and the greater market structure of when it happened and how it happened of okay, the president just launched on your chain and you can't make a higher high. That's it's hard to beat that for a sentiment top.
That's true. And by the way, what I've pulled up for you here is the bar and candle chart. That is the Solana chart. And the red line below, that is the Trump token chart. And, well, you're entirely right there, which is definitely marked at top there, which is that it launched, goes to all-time high, same day as Solana, and then immediately afterwards, both of them fall coincidingly, and they have a relatively similar bottom there, only off by about a week. But yes, this was one of the notable things about this token is that this was one of the most successful meme coin launches in history. And it was done over on Solana, particularly during a time when meme coins were performing very, very well. What people speculate is what happened here is that the people that launched the meme coin effectively kind of captured liquidity at the top. And by doing so, they captured a lot of the liquidity that was on Solana and then removed it from the chain, which is part of why the reason that you see Solana go from what was about like $300 at one point, drop all the way down to about sub $90 Solana. So it's like a 70% decrease right there.
You know, the way you just framed it and the way you just said it, makes it's funny when you zoom out and think, while this was happening, they were setting up World Liberty Finance, and what did World Liberty Finance buy right out the gate? In the majority, not Solana, not the chain that they launched their meme coin on, but the chain that was in the biggest slump, right, relative to its other contenders. So that people were talking about Solana flipping Ethereum at that time, and they were buying Ethereum instead of supporting the chain that they launched on. But they did go ahead and grab all that liquidity, probably to build World Liberty Finance's coffers, I would guess. So yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, very true. So additionally, one other point is that WLF, I do believe it holds, I want to say it was $2 billion in Bitcoin. I'm going to have to fact check myself on that one, but I believe that they have also been building up a bit of a Bitcoin reserve as well. Can't remember if the number's 2 billion, but it's up there for sure. Outside of that, this is where they're trying to give a very honest and realistic take about this organization and its prospects. So they've had global partnerships that have stirred debate. Notably, Justin Sun invested about $75 million with them, raising transparency questions, especially when the SEC dropped investigation into Justin Sun's firms after doing so. Geopolitically, they signed blockchain deals with Pakistan and engaged deeply with Abu Dhabi executives. And then ethical scrutiny revolves around major concerns like conflict of interest, self-dealing, foreign influence, and political alignment, especially given Trump's second presidency and his role in shaping crypto regulation. Now, that was largely pulled from the media headlines that have come out, but there are some interesting notes there. Let's dig in a little bit to the people that actually run it. So, CEO and founder Zach Witkoff, originally the son of a real estate mogul and U.S. special envoy to the Middle East, graduated from University of Miami, co-founded WLF in 2024, overseeing the ascent into DeFi and launching key initiatives, specifically the USD1 stablecoin. So that was him, and it's now among the top 5 stablecoins globally, by the way. This man also helped orchestrate a $2 billion investment involving Abu Dhabi's MGX fund and Binance. After that, we have the sons, Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump. They are Web3 ambassadors. That is the official title that they have. And Donald Trump is labeled as the chief crypto advocate, and Barron Trump has also been named the DeFi visionary. These two are actively involved in providing the company's strategy and promotion. Eric Trump notably has appeared in Tokyo alongside Zach Witkoff, their CEO and founder, for the Alt5 Treasury deal, aligning institutions with their crypto token strategy. After that, we have Zach Witkoff's brother, Alexander, co-founder. He's denoted as the co-founder, and he helped co-found the thing, but he's largely taken a bit of a backseat when it comes to this stuff, and he is more focused on broad strategic and structural setup. And then finally, the big man himself, Donald Trump, the 47th president of the United States. He has left the company because he cannot have ties to it. And gosh, where are my notes for this one? There you go. So he is co-founder emeritus. He removed himself upon taking office, and that is how he is formally noted. There is obviously very much a lot of pull that he has within his own family and a company that he helped co-found. So there is that. And that's where you get a lot of the speculation about like, it feels shady. They're technically doing everything above board, but at the same time, you can look at someone and be like, cool, you were in charge of a crypto company. You got elected president. You have ushered in a new age of cryptocurrency adoption that has never been seen before. I think it's very reasonable that might raise some red flags. But at the same time, though, that's not the end-all be-all on that one.
I mean, look, if Nancy Pelosi stock trades Twitter account is allowed, I think this should be allowed. I'm just going to go there.
Look, I'm in agreement with you. I really am. I am for sure. Especially considering, does it... like, if you just like really squint at it, does it look like a conflict of interest? Yeah, a bit. At the same time, though, when we actually get into the weeds on what Donald Trump has done for the crypto industry, especially inside of the United States, This is all the stuff that we've been asking for gosh, forever at this point, pretty much ever since crypto was invented. It's been largely trying to get out of the thumb of the SEC, trying to get good regulation put in, and actually find a place for crypto to thrive inside of the United States. There's been all the talk about no taxes on U.S. crypto, but we haven't seen anything official there. But overall, it just seems to me that when I get into it and I try to do an honest evaluation, it is adoption of an industry that is up and coming and is one of the... I'll put it this way. Bitcoin is almost as large as Google and NVIDIA. They have overtaken silver. They have overtaken pretty much everything that's not in the top 5 companies of the S&P 500. And it is by far the world's best performing asset class in history. So to actually be the one to bring it into adoption makes sense. Are you probably going to make money off it in the process? Also, yes, but that's kind of just how the world works, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, it's part of the deal. I mean, it's like you said, to reference the old structure, right? This is what we talked about so much during Trump's inauguration. Is that from a crypto perspective, this is a complete change of stance from the government towards it, from a rules for thee but not for me, literally. I mean, we can set stock market rules, we can define them, but we're not going to define crypto rules. We're just going to legislate through enforcement. We've gone from that to now embracing it to the degree that makes people maybe a little uncomfortable, right? Because it's in your face that the new leadership is not only laying the ground rules, but is going ahead and playing the game as well as they can. And so I, for one, am always interested in what World Liberty Finance is buying and selling.
Very true. And to finish it off here, just trying to give a very realistic picture of the company and the people involved. Did also go through and try to see if their backgrounds have any crypto related shops to them. And the answer is largely no. CEO and founder Zach Witkoff, no significant involvement in blockchain or cryptocurrency ventures previously. Eric Trump and Donald Trump Jr., they're both Web3 ambassadors, but previously not really any large or even good showing for being into digital assets. Alex Witkoff, the other co-founder, virtually no crypto background. And Donald Trump, again, previously no crypto background outside of the Trump meme coin. So overall, when we're looking at the team here, are these seasoned technical veterans? No. I think that's very fair. Not saying they can't do good things, just let you know what the resume looks like. That being said, are these people largely involved in business? Yes, absolutely. The Witkoffs both come from a family that has run a real estate empire effectively. Trumps come from, yet again, a real estate empire effectively. So at the end of the day, are these people that have a good grasp on how to do business? Yes. Do they have a good grasp on the financial system? I would also say yes, including the shortfalls, which might have been one of the reasons that led them to coming over to DeFi. So it's possible that they could flub DeFi. They could royally screw it up, or it's possible they could truly adopt it. And these could be people that really came from that traditional finance area and are actually trying to grow the DeFi area to help kind of contest that what previously was believed to be a monopolistic space effectively. It definitely is to this day. But at the same time, though, this could very much be that like challenger, up-and-comer, disruptor kind of activity. That's the way that I'm looking at this one. So I guess, Dace, question to you. If we're just evaluating this company and the projects they got going on, what are some pros and cons that we see to wrap it up?
Sure. It's funny. You know that I can give you some pros and cons.
Hey, there we go.
Yeah, look, a quick note on something you said was that they're both that most of the major players in this company's leadership have come from a real estate background. You know, especially if it's more than 10 years old, let's say, that means that they've been through a real estate cycle. And they understand two key concepts that are really, really important in my mind to crypto. And that is like networked value and mind share, right? And so different than traditional stock market guys, which are going to look at your PE ratios, or your gold bugs are going to look at inflation rates and price their stuff against inflation and say that that's why they have their edge. Real estate guys know that, you know, the network value is in the strength and the fidelity of the network. If 3 houses on the same road all go up for sale at the same time, the whole neighborhood's going to suffer for it. And if you look at crypto charts, it works really similarly. It's like digital real estate in some aspects. It's a lot trickier because you can click in and out instantly, and that's why it's so volatile. But to me, that's something that stood out about the leadership as a natural maybe progression in their business flow. As they adopt this new technology, it would make sense that people coming from an industry that understands and recognizes those two concepts and their value would be people that gravitate to this. And so for that reason, like I said, I'm pretty bullish on their outcomes.
That's true. Tell you what, I'll try to do a bit of a report card here. So let's start with possibly the negatives. Leadership team and resume. I think it's a D. You could argue it up to a C. I believe Eric Trump was an individual that experienced debanking firsthand. So understand that the traditional finance products are not for everyone sometimes, and that DeFi has a place. These are high performance people, so I'm happy to give them a C. These are business people through and through, I believe. And
yeah, I worked them up to a C minus at least.
There you go. There you go. That's fair. That's fair. All right, let's talk about actual DeFi technology and releases. I'm going to give it a B. At this point, we have the Trump meme token. We have the World Liberty Financial, which was previously a governance token that has now been changed to an exchangeable token via spot and futures trading. And we also have a stablecoin that has been operating what appears to be largely successfully. Are these crazy projects that show real ingenuity or anything crazy? No. Are they competent crypto projects? I would say largely yes.
They've already got perps live as well, right?
Yep. Yes, sir. Perpetual futures. So I feel like a B that's reasonable. It's good.
Agree. I think that's
nothing
conservative.
Crazy.
Yeah, it is nothing crazy because it's stuff we've seen before, but it's a complete package. Like there's nothing really lacking or missing, which is why I brought up the derivatives. Like, what else are you going to want from your protocol? I guess is my question. Like, what's something else people are doing that these guys aren't? They're checking a lot of boxes.
I guess here's where we get to the top of the report card. Financial backing and activity. I think this is an A. These are largely wealthy individuals that understand how to handle large amounts of money, and it's shown as much based on just their own holdings inside the company and then how they also have been using it well. So I think it's an A straight up for me, which is that when it comes to the backing and the capitalization, yeah, these are real players that have the ability to kind of move the space just with their own weight.
Well, yeah, this one's the S factor, right? Because the fact that you can have the inside line on the particulars of outrolling executive decisions is difficult. It's hard to put a price tag on the value of that. It's probably not zero.
Agreed. And the final one at the top of the report card here for me is networking and marketing. In my mind, this is an A++. This is a company that is about no more than 2 years old. They've already signed a multi-billion-dollar deal with Crypto.com, one of the largest centralized exchanges out there. They are also made up of some of the most famous people on the planet, and they have connections to industry leaders and governmental representatives, namely being the President of the United States.
Well, yeah, and this is what that X factor I just described, it gets you, right? It buys you these connections because people pick up on this and they say, hey, look, we will bend over backwards to work with you because they know that you're going to know. And so, that's kind of, if you can swim this far upstream, right, it's a rare thing from a business perspective to get this close to both a major player in the crypto space who also on the other side of their, the other hat they wear is not setting the rules, but the executive branch has some big sway and power over some of these outcomes, I have to believe. And so, yeah, I agree. And I think it's only A++ because of that X factor in terms of who's behind the curtain.
Most definitely. I'm not going to say that I think Donald Trump is going to personally intervene on behalf of World Liberty Finance, because that is just very clearly like the purest form of corruption. But if he continues to do what he does, which is that set policy from the top, directing the agencies to create good regulation and guidelines for this stuff, that is well within the acceptable bounds in my mind, which is that is exactly the purpose and the purview of the president or the executive of the government, if you will, to direct the executive agencies to promulgate the regulations that will best serve the economy and the American people in general. And I think so far been doing just that.
I would agree. I think, when it comes to crypto, I would agree. That's what the show's about. I will keep it to that, and I would largely agree on most other topics too. Maybe not 100%, just because I'm a disagreeable guy in general. But I would say that somebody's got to go where the ball's headed. Like somebody's going to be the first to market, and often it's people closest to the people making the decisions. This is just a new permutation of it because it's wrapped in a DeFi protocol, right? It's just something that's very novel. But yeah, you can argue it's corrupted or it's not corrupted. Ultimately, it's better than the SEC legislating through enforcement. That's my opinion.
I would agree. I can wholeheartedly agree with that point. All right, so to wrap it up, the elevator pitch for this company is these are great marketers. They got a great war chest. They're building some good momentum inside of the space. The downsides is they're not going to be the most technologically innovated, and they're technically slightly behind the competition when it comes to the rest of the space. They are working with some major players in the space, but this is a new company, and they will have to kind of carve a new route or really try to compete with some existing players. But overall, there is potential. There's unfortunately potential downside, which is that people might not exactly know what they're doing in the DeFi space, but up until this point, it appears that they're doing very standard DeFi stuff, if you will.
Yeah, we have to believe that they've got, inside communication with folks like Brian Armstrong and all the other exchange folks and people that see the legislative changes that are happening, and they come and say, hey, what kind of favors can we do you? All they have to do is say, hey, show us the ropes, give us the tips on how to start our own one of these. I'm sure that conversation happened with somebody. I imagine the whole world was beating down their door trying to help them set this thing up,
Oh, I bet. Yeah. Well, there you go, folks. Hope that was a good little primer on World Liberty Finance and what exactly it is and what they do. But do want to give a quick shout out to all you guys real quick. We have some excellent friends and folks in the show, in the comment section. Centurion54X, aka 54 Cent himself, says, "What's up, amigos?" Mr. Moonpill Rational Optics says, "Greeting, fellow walkers." We also got Benny Blanco coming in. Good to see you, my man. Yes, by the way, big things happening over on the Pulse Chain side of the house. The Richard Hart marketing campaign is officially in full swing. We now know that the device being mailed out to potentially millions of high-income zip codes is it's kind of like a colloquially, you can call it an Etch-a-Sketch, but imagine it's just like a digital whiteboard, just a small like notebook size thing that you can carry around. They're pretty popular in certain spaces and they've been on the market for a while. I think a popular brand is called Boogie Board. They're very useful. So hopefully it's not just a throwaway thing, but it should actually make some waves. And yep. And by the way, we do have a question that I don't know if we can quite do justice on it, considering we don't really know the Steelman argument, but Centurion54X was asking, could you guys Steelman the argument that the top is in?
Yeah, I was gonna say we were having such a good conversation. I missed the comment completely. What's up, Centurion? Good to see you, brother. Yeah, look, I think if you pull up the 4-year cycle chart, or another good one is like even the power law. I looked at the power law chart like yesterday, and like that sucker is really bullish actually. I would say the biggest case for top is in maybe like if you look at local volume. Right, I would always nitpick local volume trends against a clear all-time high, which is where we're at right now. You're going to want to see volume increasing on your corrections as you recover back up to all-time highs. Yeah, it's tough to do, man. It's tough to do. Honestly, I'm still pretty bullish on it. I think the greater 4-year cycle is another argument that you could try to really make in terms of, maybe we hover 100K plus out through the end of the cycle, and then we just take a nosedive after an extended little shoulder, right? We put in like a giant head and shoulders, and hang out 100K, maintaining that value, but we just can't push through. that would be the case, I guess. And that when I look, the real bear market case would, you'd have to take it outside of crypto and say, when they print money, the S&P crashes, and speculation absolutely goes in the tank. And so, but even then, I think people are going to run to, what they perceive as risk off. And unless it's a really catastrophic and sustained catastrophic crash in the S&P, in which case gold's going to do wild things, and the world gets scary really quickly. So yeah, the bear case is not a fun one. It's entailing the whole stock market really taking a serious nosedive, hard enough that people don't want to speculate on even Bitcoin, right? And its longevity and its narrative about being digital gold. That doesn't mean, so that's your really catastrophic bear case. If I were to spin a narrative for it, I think the more moderate bear case would be, like I said, we just can't put in a new high. We just hang out 100K, ping pong between 95 and let's say 115 or whatever, until we get a moderate, S&P correction, and then there's some other geopolitical issue that just suppresses us for some X amount of time. But I always lean bullish. That's just who I am as a person. I'm working on that. But yeah, I hope I did a decent job, Centurion. There's things to look at, but yeah, not a lot.
The only things I could add to that, again, I think this is a little difficult for us because we don't really buy into this argument a whole lot. You could argue that because the ETFs happen this cycle, we saw the market go higher faster. Specifically, we hit a new all-time high before the halving, which has never happened before. You could argue that's an indicator that as far as the upwards momentum, it was more left shifted, aka towards the front of the cycle, and it's not going to be a longer cycle, if you will, if you measure top to top.
Right.
Additionally, you could point to the altcoin market weakness, which is that it looks like the altcoins have topped and have largely been bleeding. That's really about as far as I can go with this one, because the counterpoints to all that stuff is that if we look at traditional indicators for tops, that's going to be, let's see, pull up some figures here for you. We want to look at the high cycle indicator.
I was literally about to say it's a good one to check as well.
We have
power law, or both good ones to look at.
Yeah, we have not gotten close. This is our last top, and the closest we got was in June of 2024, which was a long time ago and is not any of the areas that we're talking about. And since then, we've continued to make numerous all-time highs. Additionally, let's flip over to another one. If we go to the MVRV market value to realized value Z-score, typically we see these large spikes when we have market tops. This one was less pronounced, and it only caught the first of the double top last cycle. We have not gotten anywhere close to the top in there. Sure, you could maybe try to make the arguments for it, like back in December of 2024, which was our highest spike, and was a new all-time high then. But since then, we've come up and made more all-time highs as well. So,
yeah, look, and again, the business side. That's why I keep talking about the business cycle, because if you map it over those, especially the one you just pulled up, let's back up from the most recent 33 months on the chart you just showed, coincide with the longest dip under 50 in the business cycle in like 50 years or something. And so, yeah, I mean, I it's hard to not be bullish when you take a look at what we're looking at. Maybe we're not looking at enough stuff for the right things, but again, I think another bear case would be that now the traditional finance is in, they maintain sort of a leverage. Look at what they've done to gold, man. They kept gold sideways for a long time, and so that's another decent moderate bear case. But I still think that if they do that to Bitcoin, again, that's why I personally speculate on what I speculate, is that I think that the future lies in L1s and in programmable money and in DeFi, and just like the Trump family is starting this World Liberty DeFi. if you go look at their holdings, I didn't realize they hold that much Bitcoin. And I guess you can't go check it on Arkham like you can the rest of their holdings. Is that accurate? Because on Arkham, it says that their biggest holding is Ethereum. And so, whether that's their biggest or their second, regardless, right? It's a significant portion of what they're doing. So I personally believe that that's where, you're going to develop a paradigm not unlike gold, where there's ways you can preserve your capital, and then there's ways you can grow your capital, and the higher performance stuff is going to be in the smart contract stuff, in my opinion.
Agreed. Yeah, looks like 12 billion on Ethereum for World Liberty Financial, but Tracker could not be with us today. But I would be remiss if I didn't include his favorite thing, which is the Russell 2000. So this one, you could try to argue both ways for the cycle top is in, which is that, oh, look, the Russell 2000 already made a new all-time high just by a whisker. But if you look at the historical chart, no, it doesn't quite follow the same pattern, which is that the all-time highs are usually a good degree higher than the last one, which this one is not. So again, this is an indicator of pretty much the top 2,000, what is it, numbers 3,000 through 1,000 on the exchanges. So this is your small market cap. This is a lot of the companies that are not captured by the NASDAQ, the S&P 500. This is an indicator of kind of business overall. It's gone up, but it's not peaked. It did
so this is technically go up. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, that was pretty much it for me. Go for it.
I was going to say, so this is you can speculate on this. You can on the ISM. You cannot on the business cycle charts, but you can on this. And so while this has volatility in it, it does lead the ISM. And as you see, we're coming up here as the ISM also slowly comes up. So those two things are definitely reflect each other, right? Just wanted to say those things are super interrelated. Centurion said he's also a perma bull, and then he said just sentiment from YouTube and X. It seems like high depression, low optimism. That's how you know there's more money to be made. That's how you know you can go higher, right? If everybody was in pie in the sky land, it would be time to worry. If everybody's happy, you should be heading for the doors. And if everybody's upset, well, go buy. I didn't want to say go buy somewhere that was really going to rhyme and be horrible, but yeah, no, I think it's kind of remarkable, like you said, because I see it too. And then you look at the charts, and how are you not bullish right now? And it's because we've gone down recently. People are slaves to their emotion, and market is just made up of human beings.
Absolutely. You're entirely correct, though, which is that the sentiment on social media largely to see high depression, low optimism. Although I would just like to point us back to the old Bitcoin chart here. If you remember the sentiment from around this time back in April, after we came off 2 new all-time highs, and then we went all the way down to $74,000 Bitcoin. Yeah, people were saying it was over. I remember we even covered a story where market analysts were projecting it was going to go all the way down to like 50,000 and change before it might be able to recover or something. And yeah, like we've had these moments of very, very high bearishness. I think now could potentially be one of those times again. But overall, I mean, I think the chart says a different story. So let's pull up another classic here. The old crypto fear and greed index. Well, 55, technically in greed. Is it a lot lower than we've been previously? Absolutely. But at the same time, though,
it checked like 47 last week or something.
It did. Look at that. Oh gosh, 39 on the 30th of August.
Wow, that's gnarly. Well, yeah, I mean, that tells you that that's about as hard a reset during a run as you could get, right? I mean, there's your argument for the run being over, I guess. Have we gone that low on this sentiment chart during this bull run prior? It doesn't look like it.
We have, actually. This is only the 1-year chart, by the way. Crazy, right?
Oh, interesting. Okay.
We hit 10 back in February.
I remember that. I remember talking about how the CNN sentiment one for just stocks was at like a 4. Like it was single digits under 5. It was like 2 or 4 or something. Yeah.
To be fair, though, this is early March. And do you remember the major news story from March?
Well, it was conflict in the Middle East, correct?
It was that, but more importantly, it was tariffs. And I mean, if we go and we flip back over, we look at the S&P 500. I wonder if there's part of this chart that looks very similar. Oh, wait, that's right. It's the tariff news. So
I see. Yeah. Makes sense. Well, yeah, I hope we covered some of your some of your bear angles, Sentiment certainly one of them. I know Benny probably has a market structure argument that's more bearish than us. Shout out Benny Blanco in the chat. But I
Sure.
think, like you showed at the moving averages at the top of the show, um, Ethereum's structure just is so bullish. Whether BTC stalls out here or not, it's hard to not be bullish on ETH moving forward, given all the legislation that's coming down the pipe, and as we've talked about in previous shows, and now world of refinance we've covered here on this show. Also, lots and lots of interest in Ethereum.
Very true. I think this is a hard case for us to make. Do we see the depression on social media? Yes. I don't think anybody that's watching right now really believes it. I mean, shoot, Moonpill Rational Optimist came in here like 5 minutes at the beginning of the show, and he said, "When they cry, we buy. Ain't no one gonna break my stride." Like,
That's it, man.
I think especially the folks that we network with, and we all like watch a lot of the same people, and we try to. I know we get a lot of our information from similar groups, but we also do try to like reach out and find other stuff. That's largely why on this show, we do try to find mainstream media outlets and also larger crypto outlets that hopefully have a slightly different perspective than we do, to try to either confirm or reject the theories we're coming up with. But shoot, like, I understand why it doesn't feel good. Yes, a lot of things have gone down. Yes, altcoins are still very much in the gutter. But at the same time, though, like, the overall structure 4-year cycle is still not disproven. There's even a legitimate case, like every day it grows more and more, the case for an extended cycle for the 4-year cycle when it goes top to top. That case has been made more and more plausible as time has gone on. And overall, we're seeing big moves come out in the news when it comes to, like World Liberty Finance signing multi-billion-dollar deals with Crypto.com. We have the ETFs that are still in the pipeline for the Ethereum staking. Solana, Dogecoin is even filing for ETFs and has a reasonable shot of getting it, which is something I would not have predicted a while ago.
Yeah, the Genius Act also going to be passed in the next couple of months, along with, like you said, the ETH ETF staking. Those two together, they handshake in a way that I think is going to change the market, personally.
Yeah, you could have the bearish sentiment on it, which is that it's the sell the news event. But even if that's the case, then that means it's not here yet, which means there's still upside to go.
That's right. That is a case for a longer bull run, and ultimately, that's correct.
Yeah, true. Either way, though, we love you. We know what you're getting at. And believe me, I don't think any of us are about ready to sell the bags and call it quits for about, what is it, going to be a year and a half at this point until we hit what should be the next projected 4-year cycle low. So,
yeah, we'll see. Like our friend Agent Jay says, you take it level by level. That's why we're
absolutely
here. Literally why we're here. I'm glad you guys are here with us.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better, sir. Well, tell you what, with that being said, I think it's about time that we do the time-honored tradition of trying to promote ourselves a little bit. So, folks, if you're loving the conversation we're having here, you can head on over to our website, which is walktheblockndf.com. That is where you can find the sign up for our private Telegram channel. Inside of there, we have many, many streams, putting out a lot of good content in there. If you want the latest on the market breakdown from Agent J, that's where you're going to get it. Inside of there, we're trying to make sure that we give everyone as much attention as we possibly can, trying to be a professional white glove service to help you guys understand who you are as investors, understand the markets, and come up with a strategy that's going to work for you. All of us here have actually different strategies, and it's kind of funny to have us always comparing notes, and other people are a little more bullish or bearish or conservative. I will admit I'm more on the conservative side. So if you have those kind of questions, then maybe me. But outside of that, yes. Gosh. The waters get rough, so don't sail them alone. Come join us as we navigate digital finance together. Private mentorship, exclusive live streams, Q&A. Go from beginner to intermediate to advanced with us. I like to say, when we all work together, we win together. That's what we're trying to build over here. Outside of that, Mr. Dace, where can the people find you, and what do you got going on in the near future?
You can find me on Twitter, or on X, that is, and on Instagram at Dace Northall. Find me in the Gen Roundtable Telegram, and also live on just about all of Agent J's calls, and I'll host a call here and there. It's been a really busy season for me in my work lately, but I used to host a weekly call, and looking to get that back going again soon as well. So yeah, those are places you can find me, at Dace Northall on X and on Instagram and in our Telegram.
Love to hear it. Folks, you can find me on X and Instagram at ZenithDI. It stands for digital investments because the username Zenith was already taken. But outside of that, yes, we're going to be back next Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern time, as always, not accounting for the Labor Day weekend. But yes, that's where we stream. And if you want to get even more content, go ahead and join the Telegram. That's where you can find that. I will say, shout out to Moonpill Rational Optics. He did suggest this week's book for book club over on DGen Roundtable. That's going to be all about Bitcoin. It's a short read, but it helps people get a good understanding of cryptocurrency, the history, and its use by the end of it. So if there ever was an introductory episode using the book club, that might be one of them. Heads up, though, it is over on DGen Roundtable, so I know we're trying to be professional over here, but that's definitely where we take the tie off, cut it loose, and the language might not always be family-friendly, shall we say. Outside of that, though, folks, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We hope that you guys have an excellent week. Keep a weather eye on the horizons. A lot of big news coming in. A lot of bullets in the chambers yet to be fired, so to speak. Looking at you, ETF approvals. But outside of that, I hope all you guys have a fantastic night. Thank you so much for joining us. Good night, everybody.